Hey, this is Brook from Printrbot.com, and we are live on Facebook. And as somebody told me in person this week, can you just not be on Facebook? I think that sentiment speaks for a lot of us, my friend. But we're going to do it on Facebook for now, and we'll post it on live later. But welcome. I am so glad to be done with my travels. I went to MRF, Midwest Rep Rap Festival this week. And I'm really glad to be home, glad to have my kids home from their spring break trip, at least Levi. And it's starting to feel like it's back to normal, so that's good. So happy to be with you today. As always, if you have questions, please do ask them now, and Dave will organize them and find the ones that he thinks I might like. And I do not want one of your questions to be, what is that on your nose, and what happened to your face, all right? We're not talking about it. So anyway, it's too embarrassing to tell. I am fresh off of, literally like half an hour ago, I got back from my second root canal in a week's 8 days time. So I think I'm okay and I won't be drooling, but a little bit loopy. Happy to be healthy, but wow. They were funny. They were all rushing around and they were acting like, hey, I know you have an important meeting that you have to get to. So we're trying to hurry. We're trying to get this thing done. And I finally confessed to them, I do a little YouTube show where like 5 people show up and then I post it later and other people watch. And they were like, oh, well, let's slow down. But anyway, I wanted to be here today. So the takeaways from Maker Faire. Let me tell you, I'm Maker Faire. Ugh, I do that all the time. Midwest Rep Rap Festival. First of all, big thanks to all the people that participated, the organizers. It was a really great time. I like going to that event because it's really a gathering of enthusiasts. And it's not just people thinking, well, I want to check out 3D printing and what's up and see what there is to buy. No. You walk into that place and it is filled with, frankly, what looks like chaos. But if you walk around, start talking to the people, you see it's just a bunch of people really happy to be involved in 3D printing. And some really cool ideas, and there was some other weird things there. There was a glitter SLS printer, a conversion from something, but they were using glitter. I didn't know that the binder, or at least the powder to use those machines is actually kind of hard to get a hold of, and it's very expensive. So that was kind of cool. Also got to meet the mostly printed CNC guy, who I really hit it off with. I really like his product, and since I'm hot on CNC, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. I was really interested to hear his perspective, and what a great guy. What else? There were guys that were there with their own machines just printing, but there were the celebrities of 3D printing too, which is hilarious to even act like we're real celebrities. But Prush was there, Ben Heck, Daniel Norrie from OpenRC, the F1, had their first race. It was pretty cold, so it didn't last long. Tom was there. I got to meet Martin Bontek, which was cool. Joel, a couple other YouTube guys were there. William Steele, of course, always great to hang out with William. He was gracious enough to bring the Printrbot and the Simple Pro, which was cool. Nicholas Seward was my personal favorite. He brought a couple of high school kids. He's a teacher. I think he teaches math. But whatever he teaches, he had his students help him finish a couple of crazy 3D printer designs. Google Nicholas Seward and check out he has something that's kind of like the printer tank or the printer belt, in that it's like Infinite Z. And it's actually really big. It's about this long. But I was just fascinated with that. And he was printing. He hadn't dialed everything in yet, but I was really proud of him to have those printers. He had this weird, I forget what it's called, but it's this arm that prints like this, and it can reach all the way around, like almost all the way around itself. Just a crazy machine, but he comes up with the wildest, fantastical ideas. I love Nicholas. I got to talk to Sanjay and the E3D guys. Beaglebone was there. Elias, who did the manga screen. I'm a fan of his and that screen, and he's also got, I think he's involved, or maybe it was Beaglebone, but I need to I need to check my facts before I talk, but the Replicate, they were showing that off. So Elias was there. And then there's just a bunch of kids and fans and just really great people. So all the crazy conversations that I got to take part in were just a real pleasure. And it's always really grounding to go in and see what people are doing, what they're interested in, and also there's so many gracious people coming up and saying that Printrbot played a part in their story. It was weird. I should have kept track of how many businesses they were like, hey, Printrbot was why I'm into this business, and I got started with the Simple, or I got started with the 1405. One story I did want to, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I want to tell you, there was this one guy, James, I think his name was James, and he was blind. Now, I asked him because it was weird that he even found me, so I was like, are you completely, can you not see at all, or are you, he says, well, I'm legally blind, I have a little tunnel vision on like one eye that's kind of blurry. I see shadows and outlines. Just a wonderful dude. And he said he picked me out because my beard. He says, I could see your beard. But this was a really cool story because he was a college kid, didn't have a lot of money, trying to make ends meet. And he had scraped enough money together for a 1405, which is the wooden simple maker's kit, I believe. And I think it was the one with fishing line, although it might have been the one with belts. But anyway, so he says, that was my first one, and that really got me into this because I was able to, he was actually able to put it together, and he really got obsessed with it and got into it. Well, he went to college and got short on money, and he sold it. And so his big question was, do you have any more of those kits here? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't know. I can't promise anything, but it was just neat because he was like, I just missed that. I want to put it up on my shelf as how I got started because it led to getting a few jobs in 3D printing. And I was like, no way, what kind of jobs did you get 3D printing? And he says, well, he mentioned a couple things, but the one that was really interesting was he got hired, I think it was at a museum, and he got to develop a tour that was, I don't know if he was printing small models or if it was Braille or what it was, but he got to kind of design and put together a way for blind people, or at least people that struggle with accessibility, to enjoy the museum in a unique way. And so he got hired doing that, and he's doing some other interesting work, but what a great guy. And I was just happy to meet him and hear that Printrbot played a part in his story. And that's really the message I got from, the encouraging message that I got from Midwest Rep Festival is that there's a lot of love for Printrbot out there because we played a part of the story, and it was great to hear. All right, what else? The other thing that kind of woke me up a little bit was people were like, Printrbot, when is it coming out? I want one. What's going on? There's some YouTube guys that have like tons of followers that are like, dude, you got to give me one of these. And so, I've got all these projects that I'm trying to line up for business sake, the CNC being the chief one right now. And I wanted to knock those off before I embark, full-time into mostly full-time into this printer belt because it's so different. But with Nicholas Seward and his printer tank, we did a little talk. They roped me into just saying a few words with William Steele about how this all came about and the patents around it. And, I learned something. It was really interesting. But this Infinite Z is starting to get some interest. And funny enough, Black Belt, which was the first one that I think he did a Kickstarter for a very large, it was like $10,000 or $12,000, really expensive. But a big printer, and he had prints, but we haven't really seen much of him before that. I think he's probably reacting to me and William and even others saying, we're going to open source this thing, and this is something that other people should look into. He announced just before I went to Midwest Rep Festival, he announced that he's going to do some sort of open design that you can download and build. It looked like mostly aluminum extrusion, but I'm happy to see that. But then there's others. There's actually a company that I think it has a product out now. I thought maybe I'd be the first product, but not at the pace I'm moving. So this Infinite Z has a lot of interest. So I'm gonna next week I see a little more heat on the CNC because we got to get our documentation dialed, build one that's Crawlbot sized, finalize the ball screw size, and get all of our documentation up, start shipping these things. But really, that's my big interest right now, is Printrbot, because man, people were interested, and it was kind of a wake up call. So that was cool. Anyway, so that was good. All right, something I want to do real quick before I get into Adoptabot and CNC. And one more reminder, if you have questions, ask Dave. Oh, dang it. Don't worry about it. The audio sucked until I turned on my microphone. We had a redundant mic, which was awesome, but I take the credit for the crappy audio. Carl Ubis, he gives us a hard time about our audio, and there's been others. We're working on it. Give us a break. But one thing I want to do before we move on, I haven't really said any news, any Printrbot news yet, but one thing I'm really proud of, Dave. Yeah, Dave. Dave is here, and I asked him, some time ago, I just on a whim bought a bunch of t-shirt making equipment. And Steve was helping us with that, and he made a few shirts, but then he left. So that's been sitting there. And so we dusted off our t-shirt. It's just a single unit, it's like an Amazon kit. And we had to order new ink or new emulsion and a bunch of stuff that we needed, and we had to learn on how to do it. I say we, Dave, I've been a really important part of this process. I basically said, Dave, can you figure this out? Because I don't know what the crap I'm doing. So he did. He figured it out. And so check this out. Boom! Printrbot t-shirt. We have Printrbot t-shirts. And these are gorgeous. This is black on gray. And let me tell you, we've ordered a lot of t-shirts, and you see me wear these t-shirts. I have 4 or 5 of each of these. And I'm wearing them out, man. I'm getting pit stains. They're done. So I got to replace these. So this is really about me. No, it's about finally doing something I've been wanting to do. When you order t-shirts, man, I've tried all kinds of different things. And it just kind of stinks how hard it is to find a quality t-shirt and a printer, and it's not too expensive, and so on and so forth. So we actually have this really nice, these are Anvil shirts. This is 65% polyester, 35% cotton. So it's the really soft kind. And we are going to put, are these in the store? They're surely not. We just started. But we're going to get these in the store. But I thought that we would start out with first, I'm sure I'm hitting my mic with this, sorry. I'm probably hitting my mic with this t-shirt. But here's what I want to do. I want to have just a little quick giveaway on these t-shirts. So these are first run, and I don't know. Dave says, some of them are coming out, or some of his tests are coming out blurry. I don't mind throwing some shirts away, but these look good to me. They're good enough for me. So let me tell you, we're going to give a few away. So I've got, what sizes, Dave? We're going to give away 3 of each of the following sizes. Dave, there's a lag in audio. He's got headphones on. What sizes do we have in these shirts?
Medium, large, extra large, and double XL.
Okay, we're going to give away 3 medium, 3 large, 3 extra large, and 3 double extra large. So, and this is only eligible, I wonder if we should put a note in the YouTube post, because they're going to think, oh, I need to tweet this out. Or maybe we trick them to tweet it out anyway. But here's what I'm going to do, and you have to include the following instructions, and then I will say go. And the first people, get your Twitters out, and the first people to tweet the following, you have to denote your size. So there's going to be some hashtags involved. So the first 3 people to tweet out hashtag Printrbot t-shirts, 1 word, space. You will disqualify yourself if you do use any other, not hashtag, but you got to do it just like this. Hashtag Printrbot t-shirts, and then your size. We will send you a free t-shirt. Now, we're going to have to contact you, of course, so we got to figure that out. But I think what we'll do is just email me, or is that the best way, Dave? they're going to have to both, how do we do this? I didn't think this out at all. Is that clear? This is starting to be painfully obvious that I realized they don't want to tweet out their address. What is going
A
on?
lot of them we probably can find it.
Okay.
So we'll probably reach out to
All right.
them.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we post the winners, and they need to get a hold of us. All right. And I don't mind if they Brook at Printrbot.com is fine. And it's only going to be eligible for the guys listening, so everybody listening might get a T-shirt, since there's probably not very many. But anyway, I just wanted for the guys that show up for the show, just tweet out hashtag Printrbot T-shirts space, and whether it's M for medium, L for large, what are the other ones? XL or XXL, and then we'll make a little leaderboard and we'll figure this out because I want to give away some T-shirts. But anyway, these will be for sale. And what did we decide on the price when these are for sale, Dave?
They're 18, but we'll mark them down to 15.
Okay, they're normally going to be $18. We're going to mark them down for a little bit at $15. So anyway, and by the way, that's the Printrbot, just the logo, is the first shirt we'll do. We have the same gray shirts. We're going to get some white ink, and we're going to do, if you own a simple metal, like the old school metal like I'm wearing right here, we're going to revive this. This was just printed for like guys in the warehouse and the workers, and I think I took most of them. But anyway, we're going to release these, and maybe I'll do a play or some other models, but it's really cool. Dave's given us a superpower to be able to do T-shirts on our own when we want to. We don't have to order 100 shirts. We can print 12, we can print 20, whatever. So I don't know. Well, that didn't go as smoothly as I hoped, but that's the way we roll. Yeah, we're live, so what are we going to do? Anyway, all right, so that's that. All right, basically two things. This is the real news, Adoptabot. Now, I don't have all the belts and all the wiring finished, and as I was putting this together, I actually saw a couple of things. Like this is well, I got the wrong screws in here. But this is not quite as sturdy as I want on this front piece, so I'm going to make some adjustments. But overall, I am thrilled with the changes that I've made on Adoptabot, version 1.3. So as soon as I get done with the show, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to post the beta version of the 1.3. And here's why. I really need some people to help me verify these files. Now, I've only printed these. Now, some of these I've printed more than once, but most of these I've only printed once. And it seemed to work okay for me. I used, at first, on this big piece, and I'll tell you about the changes. But I printed this one with a really large nozzle. I thought it would be cool to go fast. It's extremely strong, but it wasn't very exact. It wasn't a 0.3 or 0.4 nozzle like I'm used to in our Simple Pros. Once I started printing them on the Simple Pro, these were like pristine, really, really nice. So here's the changes, and I'm excited about these. So one of the main problems with the version 1 and 2, 1.1.0 and 1.2, were that I just had these push fits, but now they are clamps. So on all of the bar ends, we have a clamp. That means a screw and a nut pinch this bar together and hold it tightly. Now, PLA, I printed these in PLA. Don't really recommend PLA, but PETG or, it's okay if you do PLA. I did it. But anyway, so it's a little bit slick, so you might not get it as tight as, say, machine metal, of course, but it really adds to the rigidity. So I've got a new bar end, and I kind of gave it this blocky look. So you can actually, once we verify, people are like, yeah, they're fine. I'm going to change out the front page picture and post the files on that front page. Right now, the files are going to be posted in a blog post or news post. It says like news and files on adoptabot.org. And I'll do a little blog post today, and I'll post the shared Fusion 360 file. Now, and I also have the STLs this time. So, people are like, I don't want to do the Fusion 360 thing. Just give me the STLs. Well, I'll post those today. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to mention. These are not done, and they're not done because I like this these pinched bar ends, these clamps with like physical screws and nuts holding things tightly so much that I want to go ahead and instead of just a press fit on these bearings, I actually want to do a clamp. so that you can tighten them down. So I'm going to fiddle around with that. I would actually like this 1.3 to really be a very, very solid version with less dialing in. You know, when you go to print these, you really do have to dial in your printer. Like, for instance, the bars are, you know, whatever they are, 7.98 millimeters or something like that. These, I didn't check the size, so I did have to drill these out. That's a pain. So you might have to size these up 1% or something, and like doing those tests can get frustrating. So I'm looking for something that is more forgiving when you print it, that it will be able to be put together without the need for a lot of adjustment or drilling it out, because you can ruin a part when you drill it out. I have reamers that are like perfect size to ream it out for this. They're just slightly under this bar size. That's an expensive tool, and you don't want to have to buy one. But anyway, so I want to do the these bearings as clamps, and then we're looking pretty good. Now, the other things I've changed is you notice that this comes through the top, and it looks kind of odd. I realize that. But here's the cool thing. If you did want to change your Z to a little bit longer, you could buy new bars. And I'll just be honest with you. This size of Acme, it's 1/4 inch, what is it, 1/4 inch 16 or 18 lead screw. I know it's, you know, English, not metric. But this lead screw, I have hundreds of these. And they cost me very little money. So I want to throw this in on the kit and use these. I don't really want to have to cut them and, you know, rob you of a potential 2 inches in size advantage if you want to build one with a little longer bar. So I put a hole in that thing just so I'm lazy. I don't want to have to cut that. You can cut it if you want. The other thing, now it's not shown on this model. I had it here somewhere. I don't know where I put it. But I did change this whole Acme nut. Now, some people are like, where's the Acme nut? If you look at the drawing, there is a, what is it? Is it hexagon? I think it's a hexagon. At McMaster Car, you can buy these 1/4 16 Acme nuts, but you can also print one. So I've designed one, and the one that, oh, here it is. The one that I printed, the first test, I need to upsize it maybe 1%. And I can always post a file with it oversized a little bit, but this is very tight. In fact, I can thread it down like one turn, and then it's like, ah, crap. So without a drill and a wrench, I can't really make that work. But it's important to me to make as much as this 3D printable as humanly possible and to reduce the part count. Because, you know, why not build something else if it's just like every other rep wrap? This is special because, A, it's very small. I mean, it really is small. And with these new file changes, I need to finish telling you about them, this is way more rigid. And I think it's going to print better. I haven't printed with it yet even. But it is special because it doesn't take a lot of plastic. You know, there's this case is a lot of plastic, but it doesn't take a lot of plastic. It's very small, it's portable, and I'm trying to reduce the part count down to where anybody in the world could make this with just access to some hardware store items. So I want it to kind of be universal. I don't want it to be tied into just Printrbot parts, but for now it is because that's what I have available. So the other changes, bar ends, check. Acme nut, check. Now this case, I did some clever things thinking that one of my design requirements would be that you can print this bot on this bot. But I threw that out the window because most people don't have a printer as small as this. And they have a larger printer. And you don't need much larger, but you see this case on the bottom here, it holds two motors. And you'd be surprised how heavy this thing is. It's substantial. It doesn't feel like a weeny little machine. It feels very rock solid. But in order to support and make it beautiful and have something to mount the electronics to, right now it's a printer board, it needs to be pretty sturdy. So there's a lot of plastic there. But there's not a lot of plastic in the whole thing. And you can't hack it. I mean, you could change any of the axes on this, but it's starting to get my attention to where, man, this is a pretty good little printer. This is probably even better than the 1405, the old wooden ones. It feels more rigid than the wooden ones. So I think it's a great start for schools. It'd be a great thing for you to print and donate to a local school. And remember, Adoptabot is about people printing and assembling these printers on their own dime. You can self-source or buy a kit from me. Or, and then you donate it to a local school, one that is within your driving distance, so that you can say, hey, I want to give you this printer, or maybe more than one, and I want to teach you how to use it, and then I'm available if you need anything. So, right now, I don't think there's any kits for sale because I'm in transition here. And also, it means a lot to me to have Printrbot kind of taken out of the equation eventually. But right now, I'm actually going to leave the printer board as the default model. I just can't order the Chinese stuff. I did order some of those boards in, but they're just so cheap. And we now have some older printer boards in the store. And I think as cheap as, Dave, how cheap is our cheapest old printer board? Rev D? $30 or $35. So, I mean, it's pretty cheap. And I can give you advice on how to use that. Now, that would take instead of the sensor, which isn't mounted here, it would take either forget about end stops or put an end stop on here for Z. But anyway, the other changes are, I've combined this case. I've just made it larger to print on larger printers. And this case is one piece. It actually has the clamps integrated into it. That was kind of difficult. So I need to make a couple of tweaks to this model. So this beta model is not perfect. I just want to warn you, it's not going to be perfect. But I'm going to design something that's a little better. I have a nut in there. When you use a clamp, you got to squeeze with the screw, and you need a nut to pull it in tight. So that's all integrated into this box, but it's a one print. And then, of course, you do have to add the X axis out front. Now, so that's combined in less parts. In fact, that was a 3-part item, and now it's a 1-part item. Now, this front was, I used some tricks. The old one was 1 part for the bar end, 2 part for the mount. Of course, the extruder was all printed. And then the fan shroud was another print and incorporated the hold for the Z sensor. So now, this whole thing, believe it or not, I was able to design that. It prints all in one print. You bolt the fan to it. You zip tie the Z sensor, and everything lines up very nice. It's a beautiful fit. It actually printed beautifully on the Simple Pro. I was actually shocked. I don't know if that's going to work. It worked great. So anyway, it has a fan shroud. It cools the hot end with a little hole that's there, and also takes that air and blows on the part itself at the bottom. It kind of angles down. So that's all one print. It is taller. It looks a little more uniform. It's a little more blocky. The other ones, the X bar ends, are kind of funky looking, but I like the look. And it actually printed really well, so I'm very happy. The reason I redesigned those was I just didn't like the look of the other ones, and I needed clamps on there, so I added those. And it works great. All right, so the last thing that, there's 2 items on my checklist on this. One is the bearing clamp. The other thing is I'm actually going to, I know that some of you will go, oh, great, but I ordered some linear, what are these called? LM8 UUs. They're bearings for the round bars, and they're very commonly used in 3D printing. And I just ordered some cheap ones, and man, let me tell you, they were junk. In fact, they're in here right now, and I'm not happy with them. I also ordered some, I forget what they're called, IGUS. Let me grab them. They're IGUS, they don't have ball bearings in them. These are IGUS bearings. And what is it, the RJ4JP, whatever that means. And it's just this really slick, kind of Teflon-like, I don't even know what it's made of, but it's some sort of slick plastic. I think it's oil impregnated. let me grab a bar. Whoops. I'm coming. All right. So when I put these on the bars that I have, like they were really, really, really slick, and they're very quiet. There's about as much play as the ball bearings that are inside the LM8 you use. So I thought maybe these are kind of expensive, but they're a little less fuss. But I thought, you know what, I might like to go ahead and try going back old school style. And for a starter bot, I don't think it's a bad idea, especially if the design allows you to use either printed bearings or LM8 UUs or these IGUS bearings. So I'm just going to design, I've already done it, and they're on Thingiverse and stuff, but I designed my own. I'm going to design just a little 3D printed bearing, PLA. I've even seen, back in the day I used brass, I used felt, I think Prusa used felt too, but it lowers the barrier to entry a little bit, saves a few bucks, I don't know, 20 bucks, something like that. I forget how much those were, 15, 16, $20. But I just like the idea of everything on this being printed. So those are the big changes and the two things on my to-do list. Now, the big reason why I did significantly change this model, this is actually a little bit longer. I actually elongated the front of the case. The reason I did that was, we've had some very small motors back when we were doing really small printers like this. We had some small motors. Some of them were so small that they're not even that common. And I wanted to use those up. We have these that we use in our printers now that are, we call them medium because typically companies sell small, medium, and large. These are medium. They're not the bigger, expensive, heavier ones. But I do have a lot of those. And if you do have larger, more powerful NEMA 17 motors, it does kind of help. You're going to get more push on the extruder. You'll have less trouble moving what you're going to move because they're just really strong. The printer board can certainly handle it. So I'm going to make the new kit. Once I finalize these files, we're going to put the kit back in the store because I think it's out of stock right now. And we're going to offer, optionally, you can source your own motors or you can buy, 4 from us. And they will be these Kaizen motors. And these Kaizen motors are large, very powerful, and they're a little bit longer than these medium ones. Well, this design, you could put a large motor on the Y, but you couldn't put one on the E. So now I have enough room here, because this is longer now. Now I have enough room to put a large motor on the E, the Y, and even, you can see on the bottom there's a little gap here. You can even put it on X, and that was the constraint I had, X and E. So now this model is big enough to accept any type motors. You can source whatever motor you want, and it should work. So it's just edging a little bit closer to more universal design. So enough about the Adoptabot. I'll post the files today. They're very beta because I may need to change some stuff. And if you have changes that I need to make, just email me, Brook@Printrbot.com, or you can tweet or Google+, or make a comment on Adoptabot.org on the blog post. All right, I feel like questions. Are there any questions, Dave? And then I'll talk CNC. What time is it? By the way, it was a pleasure to meet Tom. It's funny when you watch a guy's show on YouTube, you think he's a TV star, and actually Tom's just a really nice guy. That's a normal human being. And I was thrilled to hear that he is going forward with the Rep movie. I was really excited about that. So after Maker Faire, he's going to come interview me, and I'll get to hang out with him a little bit more. Are the CNC kits going out soon? Well, we have finalized the model, and can you see this okay in the feed? Yep. Ran into one slight problem. Some guy said, hey, that's the wrong size. He was right. So we got to fabricate these, and then we can ship them out. So these kits that we're shipping, there's only a few of them, only a few people popped. That's fine with me. These are bare bones. They're going to source their own extrusion and belts and electronics and router. But everything else is finalized. This is how it will appear. And this is actually the size that is in the drawing that we're using for our documentation. We're doing animations. I'm going to do a build video, hopefully tomorrow. I'm going to tear this thing down and do a build video so you can see what it's like to build one of these. It's just the bare bones kit. It's all of the hardware, which is a lot of stuff. And it would be very expensive to source all of that yourself. Because you can't order 4 of this and 4 of that. You got to order 100 or 50 or 25. But so these will ship out probably next week, I would say. I was hoping to ship them out tomorrow. And I can have Mark be cutting these. There's a chance they could ship out tomorrow, but more than likely next week for these beta kits, beta bare bones. And then we're working very hard to make sure that these become an all-inclusive kit with extrusion and belts and the size that you choose with the router, like everything's in the box. That's the way a lot of people like to buy. Now, we won't include the MDF. There's no reason for me to include the MDF. You're going to be replacing that from time to time anyway because it's a consumable. But we'll, the wiring and all of that stuff will come with it. So really happy with this. Like I said, we're working on documentation. And man, when I saw him build this, it is pretty easy to build. It goes together pretty quickly. And we're taking our time to make sure the documentation and the build process is really, really clear. We are going to include, it's somewhat simple, but it will be there, a printed manual, which we have never done. I kind of like the idea of IKEA drawings, so we're doing that in the manual that will come with it. So you can have some paper on the ground trying to figure out how this thing is supposed to go. We're bagging up the stages, like all the hardware for the Z stage here will be in one bag. All the hardware for, well, I guess you'd call the Y end stage will be in one bag, all the hardware for that. So it'll be a little easier to, instead of having to lay out all your nuts and bolts, they'll be a little better organized. So trying to do a good job. So that's that. And that was really the CNC anyway. So PB Play new version. That was one thing I brought back from Maker. Keep doing that. Murph. There was a lot of people that asked me about the new Play. And the reason I even mentioned it a couple weeks ago or last week was that I've been hearing these comments like, hey, I know you have the Simple. Nobody's begging for the Plus. I mean, maybe one guy. But I built some larger printers, the Plus Pro, the Model 3. They're still out there. And getting a little traction on the Model 3, not much on the Plus Pro. But there's been a lot of people say, that Play. And I actually had a couple other guys that came to me. One's a biotech guy that's doing disease research. And there was another guy that was, anyway, it doesn't matter. But from multiple angles, people are hitting me up for a Play V2. So I have designed one. I got to knock off a couple of custom builds using the Play first. But it's helping me get my head around what are the possibilities for another Play. And I guess the thing is, it's probably going to have to be around $500. It's not going to be $400. So I got to make sure I can make it for $500. I've decided that it will only be a kit. That's how we're going to start. We're going to start with kits. Because that's one way for me to save money. Instead of pay people to put them together, we just pay people to put them in a box. And then you'll have to put it together. But schools, clubs, even enthusiasts that like to build kits, the Play. Now, the difference that you're asking about it, so I'm just telling you off the top of my head right now. Don't quote me on any of this. But I'm willing to share any of my thoughts out loud, and you can take them with a grain of salt. But when I did the drawing, I noticed that I was able to get about 7.5 inches with the current metal, the case around the metal. This is, well, a little something I'm working on, or Mark's working on. So this is modified weirdly for this very thin. Man, he did a good job with this. That's pretty cool. But anyway, this is a mod that we did for a special use. But when I say this case, I'm talking about this width of case. I might have to draw this back just a little. But with the solid sides, a top and a bottom, and I don't need all this room underneath here, believe it or not. If I utilize the room off to the side here, there's room for actually 3 motors on the sides. I think I can get a little more space out of this existing frame. So the width that I can get is about 7.5 inches, maybe slightly less. I don't know. Man, now I'm doubting myself, but no, I see that, yeah. So 7.5 inches wide, 7.5 inches tall, and then, you know, how long of a bed do you want? More than likely, I'll land on, maybe it'll be 777, maybe it'll be something around there. But I like the cube size, just because in the past when I've done like an extra tall, people don't really want extra tall. They just want more room on the bed. So I could make some upgrades that you can add a longer, you know, 10-inch bed or something like that. But this thing is a freaking, I mean, it is so solid. You can stand on it about any way. In fact, I was talking about this one to a guy. I'm not going to crawl up on the table, but Tom did this in his video. You know, he just stood on it while it was printing. You just can't do that to any printer. It's a freaking tank. I was considering, and I still am, a box printer with a falling Z, dropping Z. But after asking around at Murph, I think the general public likes how small this thing is and how just bulletproof it is. So I definitely am really warming up to the idea of another play that is easier to build. It's going to be a little more expensive. Easier to build, no injection molded parts, at least not on. I might do a standoff that's printed in the kit or until I get them machined. But yeah, this is a pretty good little printer. I'm still seriously considering it. So, any other questions? I love that, a little further up, please. I love that, you know, you can mirror that with your, oh, you're doing something else. Anyway, I only see Cura-generated code on the bottom. Is there more after that?
I love the headless printing over Wi-Fi capability of the 2016 Simple. Can you upload Cura-generated G-code locally instead of passing through the cloud, which seems to have trouble with bigger files.
Can you roll up just a little bit more so I can think about that? So the question is, I love the headless printing capability of the over Wi-Fi. Okay, so if somebody's got a Simple Pro, and they like the fact that there is Wi-Fi, but they're looking for a way to upload Cura-generated G-code locally instead of passing through the cloud, which he's saying he's having trouble with large files. So again, we are still working on, in fact, my programmer gets back from vacation on Monday, and he's already done some tests with some changes that we've asked him for the cloud. So we are working on it. We know that that is a limitation, that local, sending files locally over Wi-Fi is not possible, not right now. If you're local and you want to print from Cura, plug in a USB cable, and then it's carte blanche. You can print whatever you want. Because it streams the file, there's no problem with, you know, large files. Now, yes, when we rev the screen, in other words, when I make the next version of the screen, and there is no promise on this, it's probably going to be a while. That is the one pain point that people have said, well, we'd really like local access to the printer, like move a file to the printer locally. I got to tell you a couple of secrets about the screen. They're not secrets. It's open source. If you go to GitHub, you can read all about it. But the constraints of moving large files over Wi-Fi with running a display that's a, what is it, 320 by 240, I think, color screen with images, thumbnails coming down, everything's working at once. You got a small little tiny ESP 8266 or 8622, I always forget, but an ESP Wi-Fi device, and then you got a MK20 teensy chip. It's not a lot of processing power. And so there's, you have to take very careful, you have to do very careful programming so that, you know, if you're downloading a 100 megabyte file, I mean, it's going to take a while. And there's error checking on all this. It can only send little bits at a time. So we actually implemented, it's open source, but we implemented a file system that is, I don't want to say proprietary in the sense that it's patented or anything. It's not. It's open. But it's not a G code. It's not a G code file. It doesn't say .G code. It actually has a thumbnail embedded. It explains what kind of file it is, how long it's going to take, how much filament it's going to use, that kind of thing. So it's complicated. It's not as simple as a regular, you know, something like Octoprint. Not that that's simple, but it's not the same. So while it might sound trivial for me to, hey, allow local Wi-Fi, just let me load the file locally. Well, this screen is looking for a project file, which is like a folder with all of the files that belong to that project inside. Now, for you, it might be one file many times, but in like the case of OpenRC, it might be 44 files. And so we package those files together because we're swiping along, you know, generated thumbnails, and this project file just grabs one of the models and shows that as the project. I like to upload a new thumbnail that shows the finished project. So like on the Adoptabot, I have a screenshot of the Adoptabot on my project file, and then all of the Adoptabot files are inside. So that doesn't happen normally with printers because nobody's done an ease of use. I mean, I say nobody. Very few people have done like a really easy to use interface. Like if you've got a Prusa and you wanted to print an OpenRC and you thought you're going to be really clever and you're going to slice everything ahead of time, and let's say that it didn't all fit on one plate. Let's say that you got to do like 8 or 10 prints. You might think, well, I'm going to upload all my files right now. Well, some of these files can end up being, the name can be truncated, although not always. You have to know what the name of the file is in relation to the part that you want to print. Well, we hated all of that, so we implemented a beautiful thumbnail that just shows you what the part looks like. And so when you scroll through your project files, you can see, oh, that part looks exactly like this. And there's a little image of it and what it is. And then the next part, swipe. Oh, okay, it's a, you know, a little thing for your belt, tensioner. It shows a thumbnail. So because we did things that should make it easier for the user to identify the part, it's harder to do. It's more complicated on our end. So it's I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying it's not trivial, because that would mean if I wanted to give you the ability to push G-code files, we might be able to do something with our G-code upload, so there would be no thumbnail. That's probably the way we'd have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to lack the thumbnail, the project file, the information that we need. You're going to have an app on your computer, and that means pay a guy to write an app. Oh, it doesn't work on Windows. Well, let's write a Windows app. Oh, it doesn't work on phones. Well, let's write another app. So we're trying to keep it simple. And I guess for that very thing, we've made it hard. Now, Bill at Polar 3D, William Steele, he has already been tinkering around with the touchscreen and the firmware that's in that ESP. And he has started hacking that so that somebody could literally flash the firmware over the air for the ESP chip, and it just works with the Polar 3D cloud. Now, well, that tells me, because there is a project out there called ESP3D, I think is what it's called. Oh man, my teeth are starting to hurt. If somebody out there wanted to build this thing just to do exactly what you're talking about, hey, let's modify the firmware so that we can print to Marlin, or that we can print, or we can receive files locally, or we, you know, block Brook's stupid cloud. You know, some people feel that way. That is awesome with me. That would be totally awesome. The problem is paying the guys, taking the time to actually put some R&D and dollars behind local Wi-Fi. There's a lot we'd have to sacrifice to be able to do that. It's just not a priority right now, so we're not going to do it right now. I know it's a very long answer, but I will say when we rev this printer one more time, I will probably have either a way to stick a file into from an SD card, a G-code file, boom, and you can just print with it, or at least, at the very least, have a way to upload a G-code file locally. So I do want these things, but they are very expensive. Very expensive. They are. So if you want to give me a bunch of money, I'll do it even quicker. That'd be awesome. So if you're a programmer and want a challenge, I will send you a free whatever you want. If you want to help, I got hardware. I don't have a big old pile of cash that I can just, hey, let's do this feature. It also creates a little bit of confusion when you say, hey, this is the way it works, and it only works one way. So if you don't like that, don't buy it. That sounds mean, but that really narrows your customer service down to like, hey, this is how it's intended to be used. It's already confusing enough to try to get people to switch back and forth between USB printing and cloud printing. So I tell people, yeah, you can do USB printing, but it's going to be a little different if you're a Marlin user. So just be ready. It's a little different. The Tiny G board is better than Marlin. I don't care what any of you say. It's better, but it is different. All right, next question. What infill should you use for parts for the Adoptabot? I was thinking of using a single zip tie over the bearing housing to make it more stable. Not a bad idea. The infill I use is usually like 30 to 40%. I want it pretty heavy infill to be strong. So that's what I do. In fact, these parts, there was one that was printed on like the default for our high resolution prints on the Simple Pro, and it wasn't adequate. You know, that, no. You want heavy infill, definitely. But hopefully this next design, it will allow a little more strength in those bearings, because I agree with you. There's a 3D printed nut for the Adoptabot that is a direct replacement for the original Delrin nut that was shipped in the first kit. Was that a question or a statement? Is there? Yeah, it was the simple nut, wasn't it?
Oh, okay, I can share that.
Well, it's already online, but the simple metal used a funky little Delrin block that we machined, and yeah, that is available online on Umagine. We posted the whole simple metal model, but yeah, you know what? We should probably just reshare it. You can post it on the Well, if you give it to me,
You can buy it in the store, but I'll also share it.
yeah. You can buy that in the store for if you've got version 1 on the Adoptabot. You can print it. Yes, I've shared it a couple of times, but I agree that there needs to be like a centralized location for all these variations. But you know, you wouldn't have to. You'd only have to reprint two, the nut and the other part that holds the bearings. You could reprint that and use a printed nut. The one on this one mounts on top. The other one's going to be underneath. And you can always, I mean, they're like $2 on Amazon, so you could use that as well. There's also, well, I don't know if that would fit. But anyway, yeah, part of the problem with this is, you know, it's a very small bot. You can get those brass ones, but they're about that big around with the TR8. I've seen those brass ones. This is a different lead screw. But the reason I didn't use a TR8 and a brass one, I didn't have a lot of TR8 to spare. I wanted to use the stuff I have a lot of. But it was really big, and it's too big. So, yes, we will provide that link. Any other ones?
No, let's see, I think.
That's all I had.
Do you use Octoprint on the Simple Pro?
Yes, you can indeed use Octoprint on the Simple Pro. There was a really kind gentleman that I talked to about, you remember I mentioned that G2 page. So the Printrbot G2, like I said, it runs Tiny G, not Marlin. And so there's some commands and stuff that people want to know, you know, resizing your bed and whatnot, changing the lead screw. If they want to use that G2 board for other printers, they certainly can. There's no limitations there. In fact, it's actually more configurable, far more configurable than the Printrbot was, or even Marlin. But there was some confusion. We've had you know, a lot of questions over time, and in Zendesk, our customer support system, sometimes those get buried. They get put in all different places. If you don't know what to search for or whatnot, you might not be able to find it. So we have started a page for the G2. Do you know the address of that? He'll put a link to the G2 page. But he said, Brook, I can't find that page. Well, he got home and did a search on Google or whatever, and he found it. but it needs to be a little more obvious probably. We'll post the link in the notes here, or in the forum. But he said, hey, there's some things that you probably haven't covered, some things that I have found. He wanted to use it with Octoprint and did run into a few problems. Now, I know it works with Octoprint, but there may be some unsupported codes that he's trying to use. So he's said, hey, I will volunteer the time. He already has a G2 printer board, and he's going to help us make that page better. And so that's fantastic. If you're a community member that wants to throw a little weight into helping us make the G2 page better, whether it's for Octoprint, it's used with Octoprint, or something else that you're doing, then great. We would love your help. Understand that if I don't sell it, or I didn't write the software, I'm slow to support those things. Like, I don't know how many people have yelled at me, why don't you support E3D? Because we're a competitor. Because we make our own hot end that's better. And you know, some people like E3D, so they want me to support all that. Well, I'm not going to. The community, that's your job, so you go do it. Octoprint's kind of the same way. Even though I love Gina and love Octoprint, and I've used it from time to time, I like our cloud. I built it for me and others that didn't want to mess with any of that bells and whistles and extra complexity and USB cables and all of that. So I use what I like, the stuff that we make. And but the community is great at figuring out the problems, the things that we need to fix to work with other software and such. So we're willing to do that. So help me, help me. So it's 5:30. Have a good week. Happy printing. That T-shirt thing, well, good luck. I hope somebody gets a T-shirt. Maybe not. But if not, next week we'll get them up for sale. So hope you have a great weekend, guys. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. He's risen. Indeed.